Oh boy, did they miscalculate down there at Unifruit. What's Unifruit, you ask? That's the CIA's code name for the United Fruit Company, which was the name that Chiquita Banana used for most of the last century. Now, why did a private company have a CIA cryptonym? Well, because for most of the 20th century, the United Fruit Company was a tool for the CIA's dirty tricks in Latin America. Now, don't get me wrong, if it comes to choosing sides between the United States and petty dictatorships, I'm on the side of the United States every time. But I'm not on the side of Chiquita Banana, which did some of the dirtiest dirty work for the CIA. The brutal stuff, the democracy-destroying stuff, the worker-abusing stuff, the corruption stuff. Frankly, it could be argued that the conduct of the CIA and their puppets and Chiquita Banana, by turning so much of Latin America into a banana republic, a phrase literally coined to describe Chiquita's corrupt way of doing business, that drove those countries into the harsh embrace of socialists like Che Guevara and Fidel Castro. That all happened on Thursday, that boycott by Chiquita. But on Friday, Canada decided to fight back. Prime Minister Stephen Harper was asked about this Chiquita boycott, and he slapped Chiquita down, pointing out that our oil sands are environmentally no worse than other heavy oil in the world from countries like Venezuela and even from California. So he defended Canada's oil sands, and he said Chiquita was trading in, quote, misinformation. Other cabinet ministers weighed in too, including Jason Kenney and Rona Ambrose, who both said they're going to personally boycott Chiquita Bananas and buy Del Monte or Dole instead. They stood up for Canada. But here's the exciting part. From a national pride point of view, this issue doesn't just rev up the political class. It revved up severely normal Canadians, people who don't have any connection to the oil sands or to politics or to journalism, thousands of real people who are sick of Canada being smeared by foreigners looking for a quick PR hit. Let me give you an example. Here's a Facebook group calling for a Canada-wide boycott of Chiquita products, including Fresh Express salads. It's not just people clicking like on Facebook and moving on. It's one of the liveliest discussions and debates in Canadian politics today, with people really explaining why Chiquita is so offensive. It's awesome. It's a great debate going back and forth. You should check it out. And check this page out. It's a grassroots site by my friends at Ethical Oil, which has allowed hundreds and hundreds of Canadians to write directly to Chiquita's U.S. management, condemning them for their defamation of our country. I love this issue because I love ethical oil and I hate conflict oil, and thugs like Chiquita criticizing us ticks me off. Yeah, I said thugs. I said thugs. Here's what I mean. Just 4 years ago, Chiquita pled guilty to making payments to terrorist paramilitaries in Latin America. Just like in its old Unifruit days, eh? The U.S. Justice Department, when they announced the $25 million fine of Chiquita for supporting terrorists, showed that Chiquita's executives actually continued making terrorist payments even after their own lawyers repeatedly told them to stop. Here are some excerpts from actual legal memos to Chiquita from its own lawyers, begging Chiquita to stop breaking the law. But Chiquita's executives refused. Must stop payments. Bottom line, cannot make the payment. The company should not make the payment. Again and again they were told no, and again they did. Yeah, thugs, I said it. Chiquita's executives ignored advice that they were breaking the law. Because, you know, some habits die hard at Chiquita Banana. Anyways, the prospect of Unifruit criticizing Canada was so absurd that even traditionally anti-oil sands voices felt compelled to tell Chiquita Banana to split. Here's the Toronto Star. Check out their editorial from today. Let me quote. The bright lights in Chiquita's marketing department have settled on a blame Canada strategy to green their image in the eyes of American environmental activists. This is one firm that has never met a banana peel it wasn't prepared to tread on, unquote. It gets way tougher from there. Look, when you've lost the Toronto Star, you've lost even the Canadian left. For that, I thank Chiquita, such an odious opponent that really no one other than some CIA moles would be cheering for it. So here we are, a moment of actual national unity. I mean, other than a couple of fringe New Democrat MPs and a few foreign-funded lobbyists, all of Canada is united against this anti-Canadian boycott. It's awesome. Other politicians have broken the ice and called for a Chiquita boycott too. And then yesterday, Alberta's premier weighed in. Now, she took her time. Like I said, this story broke last Thursday, and she took 5 days before commenting. So when she came out, the coast was already clear. I mean, there was no risk. She wasn't the first politician. She wasn't really risk-taking. She had the most at stake, by the way. The oil sands are obviously in her province of Alberta. It's the lifeblood of her economy. But she was happy to let others do the heavy lifting for half a week. And then she weighed in yesterday with guns blazing. No, I'm just kidding. She surrendered yesterday. Seriously, here's what she said. Look at this clip.
Well, I think it's a really interesting, I'm going to call it a case study in exactly what we're seeing right now in terms of environmental activism, which is a corporation who is concerned about environmental outcomes, talking about a lower emission fuel standard, saying that that's a concern to them, and the spin that's put on that by environmental activists is to say, oh, it's a boycott. And then to have the company have to come out and say, well, no, it's not actually a boycott. We're just talking about wanting to do better. Well, we all want to do better. And when we can have a real conversation about that and say that we're going to continue to strive and that some of the customers that we may have want us to continue to strive and that environmental NGOs want to see better outcomes, as do we, that's a more honest conversation. But we're not going to achieve anything when we have the spinning going on. We're not doing that, and we don't want others to do it.
So let me get this straight. Chiquita Banana's boycott is an interesting case study, like she's some third-party observer or some pundit, not the premier who ought to be deeply involved in defending the province. She wants to observe it from the outside, from the sidelines, from the bleachers. And what does she think, what does she call Chiquita, Unifruit here? What does she call them? A concerned corporation. And they're not to blame for this whole thing. It's just a misunderstanding. You see, those environmentalists represented them. Folks, I've listened to that clip 4 times now, and she's actually mouthing the talking points of Chiquita, not the talking points for the oil sands or for Canada. You'll notice she doesn't actually defend the oil sands at all. She says, we all want what Chiquita wants. You know, can't we all get along with the people who hate us? So a brutal, criminal, odious foreign company calls for a boycott of Canadian oil, and the premier of the oil patch calls them a concerned company just trying to do the right thing, the same thing we want? I mean, put aside the environmental facts and the economic facts. Who the hell was she trying to appeal to here? The huge banana-picking lobby in Alberta? I mean, if she won't defend the oil sands, who will? And if not now, then when? She had 5 days to get this right, and she screwed it up. Let me do something that Redford's crack staff clearly didn't do. Let me read through Chiquita's declaration of war against Canada with you. Here's a copy of it right here. Here it is. It's a 2-page letter from Chiquita's senior vice president. Look at that right at the top there. This is not spin from an environmental group. It is Chiquita's corporate policy on their letterhead, not from a junior staffer, from the top, the senior vice president. Second, it's not about low carbon fuels, as the premier said. Not once in this 2-page letter does Chiquita say they're looking to lower their carbon in all their fuels. No. If they were, they would then talk about other high carbon heavy oil like Venezuela's, which is heavier in carbon than Canadian oil sands oil. They talk about California oil, which is much heavier. In fact, it's called California heavy. No, Chiquita isn't talking about reducing its use of heavy oil. It's only talking about, quote, the tar sands, to use their pejorative term for us. They use that hateful phrase 6 times in the letter. Tar sands, tar sands, tar sands. They never talk about other heavier oil sources from conflict regions like Venezuela. This was an anti-Canada, anti-Alberta attack. And no, Premier, they're not interested in a discussion. They're interested in a boycott. Let me quote to you exactly from this letter. Quote, Chiquita will avoid, where possible, fuels from tar sands and adopt a strategy of, quote, elimination of those fuels. They say their new trucking contracts will, quote, ensure that this fuel is not being used for ground trucking transportation. Did you get that? Elimination. Ensure it. That's a boycott. That is an economic declaration of war against Canada. It's not against high carbon fuel. It's not against Venezuelan oil. Only against one source of heavy oil, Canada. Chiquita even boasts in their letter that their CEO himself personally told this to their truckers directly. Chiquita could not be any clearer. No Canadian ethical oil sands oil is allowed. None. Zero. Eliminate is their word. What part of the word eliminate do you not understand? Oh, but maybe this is the sentence from Chiquita's letter that won over the Premier's heart. Let me quote. Chiquita, before smearing Canada, says it is, quote, passionate about protecting and improving the communities we operate in, unquote. Seriously, that's what the Banana Republic Company says, the CIA front company says, the convicted confessed criminals who gave money to terrorists. That's what they say. These are the people that Premier Redford calls concerned corporations who have simply been misunderstood, and can't we all get along? You know, it's not the first time that Redford has let down the province's core industry. She refused to stop Alberta tax dollars from going to fund anti-oil sands documentaries. She funds them, seriously. And then during her first visit to the United States, she said she wasn't going to lobby for the Keystone XL pipeline. Well, then who exactly do you think should do that? Maybe the Premier of Prince Edward Island? I endorsed Alison Redford for the Tory leadership, despite her leftist tinge, on the basis of two promises she made to me on our TV show. The first was her promise to repeal the censorship provisions in Alberta's Human Rights Act. She has not done so. And in fact, she's backed away from her promise, merely promising to have someone else study the matter. That's what she promised during the election. Fine. So she's not interested in free speech. But you don't need any ideological commitment to stand up for the oil sands if you're the Alberta Premier. You just need a drop of common sense, a drop of loyalty, a drop of realization that you are not a pundit. You are not a professor with an interesting case study. This is real life. This is the big fight. Foreign governments, foreign lobby groups, and foreign companies are all attacking Canada's oil patch. That is your province. And the one politician who can't even muster a defense of the industry is Alberta's own Premier. How pathetic. You know what? I'm embarrassed to have endorsed her for Tory leader. We need an advocate for the oil sands, not another mealy-mouthed hack just regurgitating Unifruit's talking points. What an utter disappointment to have a Conservative Premier who doesn't even give as much of a damn about her province's key industry as the Toronto Star does.